Welcome to the Marin Women's Hall of Fame. I'm Teresa Blythe, and our guest today is Frances Steadman, a political activist, teacher, and former Peace Corps volunteer who lives in Marin County. Congratulations, Frances, on this award.
Thank you very much. I was surprised when it happened, but I'm really happy about it.
Great. As I understand it, you were born in Los Angeles. Can you tell us a bit about your upbringing and how it influenced the person you became?
Yes, I can do that. I was born in Los Angeles of Quaker parents who had very strong convictions about not discriminating against people on account of their race and also helping the poor. They were very good people, and I think that they raised me with some very good philosophies.
So the social justice aspect of your life started very early. I
believe that it did. That is, believing in social justice came very early in life.
When I say social justice, what does that mean to you?
What it means to me is that every human being on this earth has the right to enough food and a decent place to live and dignity.
So that covers a lot of different movements.
Yes, it does.
Frances, talk about some of the ones. What did you first get started on as a political activist?
Well, probably among the earlier things that I did was in the 50s, they were exploding atomic bombs in the atmosphere, and I was really worried about my children being affected by nuclear fallout. And I was in a group called the Marin Women's International League for Peace and Freedom, and we were picketing to try to stop this explosion of nuclear bombs in the atmosphere. So that was probably one of the earliest things that I did, was protesting against the atmospheric testing of nuclear weapons.
Growing up in Los Angeles as a Quaker and as a child, what was that like?
I would say that we were not a terribly active Quaker family because the church that we really belonged to was so far away that we didn't go too often. So in other words, I went to the little church on the corner, but the Quaker principles were kind of at my mother's knee.
And your mother and father were active in, and you said, anti-prejudice types of activities?
It wasn't so much that they were active in any movement or anything. This was just part of their personalities, you know. We were just raised with these ideas, and nobody even tried to inculcate them into us. We just knew this was right.
Were you shocked when you found out that other people didn't always share that view?
I was disappointed when I discovered that there was a lot of prejudice in the world. I was, yes.
From the nuclear freeze movement, where did you go from there?
We were also involved in trying to stop the design of nuclear weapons at Livermore Laboratory, and many of us went out to the Livermore Laboratories and actually picketed the place. In fact, in 1982, they even arrested us for picketing the Livermore Laboratories, where they design new nuclear weapons, and even today they are still designing new nuclear weapons. So this was one of the big protests that I was involved in. The other thing that I have done through the years is put on a peace contingent in the 4th of July parade. You know, every year in Larkspur and Corte Madera we have a parade, and our group would put on a peace contingent, and sometimes it would be about different things. Like when we were celebrating the anniversary of the United Nations, we had a peace float which was about the United Nations. So this was just part of my peace activities, was the 4th of July parade.
You felt that the traditional 4th of July parade was advocating victory in war?
Well, for the most part, 4th of July tends to be a little bit militaristic, and we wanted to inject the cause of peace into the 4th of July parade.
Frances, what brought you to Marin County?
Well, let me see now. Back in the olden days, you might say, I came up to UC Berkeley to go to school, and I liked it up here in the Bay Area very much. And so even though during World War II we had moved out of California, I knew that when we came back that Marin County was the most beautiful place to be. So after the war was over, we came back and bought a house in Mill Valley.
And that's where you live now?
Well, actually, I'm living in Corte Madera now, but I think Marin County is the most beautiful county in the whole world.
When did you decide, and what made you decide to become a teacher?
Well, it was mostly that it was about the only thing that was available. You know, when I first started training, it was during the Great Depression, and there weren't really all that many jobs, and so I decided to go into teaching, even though I wasn't terribly enthusiastic about it, but it was a job that was available.
Did you stay in teaching very long?
No, I actually didn't. I was only in a short time, and then, well, my marriage ended, and I thought it was time to go someplace else, so that was when I joined the Peace Corps and went to Africa.
You spent 4 years, or over 4 years in Africa?
I was in the Peace Corps in Africa from 1974 to the end of 1977, and that was a very wonderful experience.
What part of Africa, and what were you doing in Africa?
I was in Kenya, and I was teaching biology in a boys' high school, and I had the feeling when I was there that it was almost as though Kenya was where biology was invented. It just seemed as though it was just so full of life that it was just a very beautiful and learning experience for me.
When we talked before, you said that you learned more from the people of Kenya than they learned from you.
Well, I think that's true, and I still count many Africans as my friends. In fact, I was just there in July of this year, and I go back and visit former students who've now grown up and have families of their own, and I just feel as though my African friends are just part of my extended family.
How did you first become active in the peace and justice movement? You've mentioned the nuclear freeze movement. What else?
I think that it was probably my concern for the health of my children, and also my worry that if things continue the way that they were continuing, that a catastrophe might happen, because nuclear weapons were totally getting out of hand, and I just felt that I had to take the responsibility for it. And I was in groups that, well, like I was in a Quaker group that was protesting against the atmospheric testing of nuclear weapons, and we were like marching and protesting and just trying to say, no, development of nuclear weapons is wrong and it must stop.
And yet today we still have nuclear weapons around. Do you feel that your work with the nuclear freeze movement was successful, and if so, in what ways?
Well, I feel that there has been a great curtailment in the production of nuclear weapons. For instance, we always used to go out to the desert near Las Vegas and protest the atmospheric testing of nuclear bomb. Well, because of the protests by so many people, they have stopped the atmospheric testing of nuclear weapons, and in fact, they've pretty much stopped the testing of weapons now, and I think it's largely because there have been so many protests by people saying that it is wrong.
So you really believe that political activism can change things?
I do. I really do feel that when people care enough and express themselves enough in large enough numbers, that it does affect what our legislators do and what our government does.
So would you encourage young people to choose one issue or several issues? How would you like young people to get involved in politics?
Well, I think different people are moved by different things, and I think that it sort of depends upon what seems to be important to the young person. You know, maybe they are interested in making make it more possible for people of other races to be accepted in jobs in universities and so forth. I mean, maybe that's their favorite issue, but I feel that young people naturally have a concern for justice, and that I think that they should not hesitate to involve themselves wherever they see injustice being done, wherever they see people being hurt unjustly, that they should take the responsibility to do what they can to bring about a change.
In Marin County, where do you think injustice is not being spoken to?
In the olden days, it was not possible for a black person to, say, live in Mill Valley. Many of us worked very hard on that issue, and now restrictive covenants keeping people of other races out are illegal. That was because ordinary people cared enough to work on that issue. And so right now, as far as I know, there is no prohibition of people living in any place because of their race. But where there is an injustice, I would say it's largely the injustice of poverty. And in Marin County, we do have poverty. In the canal area, there is poverty. In Marin City, there is poverty. And I feel that poverty is an injustice, an indignity, and that we need to work on making it possible for everybody to have a decent job, and a decent way of life. So that's the main place where I see injustice.
And you've worked with the Canal Ministry or the Canal Alliance, have you not?
Yes, I have.
What is that, the Canal Alliance about?
Well, the Canal Community Alliance is mainly about helping immigrants from various countries to be accepted in Marin County and to find the help that they need, find jobs, and so forth. So I feel that it's a very good organization, and I'm not terribly active in it, but I have been associated with it for a long time.
You've also worked around peace and justice issues in Central America.
Yes, in fact, that's probably my main concern right now. I'm in an organization which is called the Marin Interfaith Task Force on Central America, and we help to educate people about the realities of life in the Central American countries. And this all got started back in the 80s when people, especially from El Salvador, were fleeing oppression in El Salvador and coming to this country and needing to find sanctuary, and our government was not actually willing to give it to them, and so many of the churches all across the country formed sanctuary groups and welcomed these immigrants into their churches and protected them from being deported back to their own countries. So anyway, out of the sanctuary movement grew this concern for immigrants from Central America, and then also learning about those countries. And so that's one of the things that my group does. We organize tours to El Salvador and Chiapas, Mexico, and we also provide humanitarian aid to these countries, and we try to educate the people. We have public meetings where we educate them on various aspects of the life in those countries.
The tours that you organize to the different countries, are they primarily to show people in this country how people in the rest of the world live?
I would say that's one of the main things. Of course, once you have been to a country, somehow it opens up your heart. You're never the same. And you always feel as though, oh, those are the people that I know and care about. Those are the people that I want to help.
One person who nominated you for this award says your motto seems to be, find a need and solve it.
Well, if that's true, it seems as though the needs tend to find me. It doesn't seem as though I ever have to go out looking for them, because it seems as though needs are constantly springing up. You see injustices and you try to do something about it. And also you see organizations that are doing something that you say, oh, that's something that I want to be involved in. Like one of the organizations that I work with is called Pastures for Peace. And this is an organization which sends whole caravans of humanitarian aid to places like Nicaragua and Chiapas, Mexico. It goes all across the country collecting humanitarian aid of various kinds, like blankets and tarps and clothing and food, and it goes down and distributes them. And so I've been involved with Pastures for Peace for many years, and will probably continue to be, because the need is just simply very great. And right now, you know, now that we've had this hurricane down there, the need is especially great. And so we're doing all that we can to gather humanitarian aid to help the people that were victims of the hurricane.
There are so many needs out there. How does Frances Steadman decide which ones to support and which ones have to be other people's causes?
That is often a problem. You know, sometimes you tend to spread yourself too thin, but since I'm in an organization, I am not alone. I am working with a wonderful group of people, and this is one of the big advantages of being in this kind of work. You meet the best of people, and my friends are people who care about the same things that I do, like peace and social justice and helping people who need help. And so I feel that I am not doing it all. I've got a lot of help.
Throughout your years as a political activist, who have been some of your role models, people you've looked up to?
Well, this may sound odd, but I still feel that my parents, even though they've been gone now for over 10 years, I feel that my parents were my role models. They were good, honest, caring people, and they started me out on the right path. So they're still my role models.
Anytime you take a political stand, there's a certain risk involved. What are some of the risks that you've taken over the years and some prices that you've had to pay for those stands?
It is not always possible, it's not always popular to stand up against war. And we have marched and picketed against war, and I have been actually arrested for picketing against war, and I also have even been attacked by ruffians who came and they would tear the picket signs out of our hands when we were picketing against war. So I once spent even 12 days in jail because we were picketing at Livermore Laboratories against the production of nuclear weapons, and so that was one of the risks, being arrested and put in jail. I don't feel that my life was ever in danger, but I am willing to go to jail if necessary to stand up for what I believe in.
And how do you explain to young people? I mean, going to jail is a serious thing. How do you explain to them that sometimes going to jail can be the right thing to do?
Well, I think that young people probably already realize this, that many good people have gone to jail for what they believe in, because sometimes society is not always right in what it does. And so when you see an injustice being done by your society, that if they put you in jail because you stood up against that injustice, then this is the price that you need to be willing to pay.
What was the actual charge against you?
The charge against me, it was, I think that they said it was obstructing traffic or something silly like that.
What sparks your passion for social justice?
Well, I think it was probably just the way I was raised. You know, it seemed as though my parents were always encouraging me to, like, stand up for my rights or stand up for the rights of everybody else. And so from a very early age, I was being encouraged. I was the shy one in the family, and they were always, like, pushing me to stand up for my rights. And so I think that it got inculcated into my personality, and maybe they even overdid it a little bit.
Have you done the same with your children, pushed them to stand up for their rights?
I think probably I've leaned over backward not to push them too much, and although they all really agree with my philosophy, therefore peace and social justice, they are not nearly as active as I have been.
What about your grandchildren?
My grandchildren, I'm not really sure just what direction they will go. You know, they all, their hearts are all in the right place, but you know, they're sort of busy with their lives the way young people usually are, and so they haven't really gone out and protested.
Frances, what do you do for fun?
Oh, I have lots of things that I do for fun. Probably the thing I like to do the most is I sing with a senior citizens group in San Anselmo, and I love singing, and I know lots of old songs, and it just brings me great joy to sing. And the other thing that I like to do is I like to hike on the trails, and that's the only, I always say, it's the only sport I do well is walking.
What's the next cause for you?
Well, let's see, the big thing that our group, the Marin Interfaith Task Force, is working on right now is something that is called corporate disclosure. And this is a movement to get corporations such as Walmart to tell what are the factories where their clothing is produced, under what conditions is it produced, are they hiring underaged workers, are they paying them a living wage, and of course the companies do not want to tell where their factories are, but pressure is building, and we're also trying to impress people. When you buy a piece of clothing, you really want to know, was this made by a 15-year-old girl that was forced to work overtime until midnight and was not paid enough to live on? In other words, people really need to care about how their clothing was produced, and the movement is growing, and I think that it's going to succeed.
How do you yourself know? I mean, do you try to be careful about what you purchase?
Well, mostly I buy my clothing from either Salvation Army or Goodwill. When it's secondhand, you don't worry so much about how it was produced, because it's you know, it's already been around a while.
So you believe in living simply?
I do believe in living simply, and I also I try to live as inexpensively as I can, so I have something left over to support all my good causes.
That's kind of difficult to do these days, isn't it? Live simply.
For me, it isn't,
No?
because I've been doing it for so many years that it comes natural to me.
How do you find the courage when people come back at you about your beliefs and you want to stand up for your beliefs?
Well, I think by the time you get to my age, you stop being afraid anymore. I don't worry about what people think. You know, I don't have any trouble expressing what I think is right. And so it isn't a problem for me, but when I was a young person, I was afraid that somebody would disagree with me.
How did you overcome that?
Well, somehow I think I just lived through it, and you know, you develop more confidence in yourself as you get older. So it wasn't anything that I did, it was just probably the process of getting older.
What would you like to say to young people who might think they're too busy to get involved in the issues of the world? How would you like to raise their conscience about this?
Well, I think that a young person knows what offends his own dignity, and if he sees somebody who is being put down for any reason, either because of their race or because of their appearance or some infirmity or disability that they have, a young person knows that is not right. That makes that person feel bad. And so standing up for people who are being oppressed for any reason whatsoever, I think young people automatically know this is wrong, because they know how they would feel if they were in that position. And I think that young people should have the courage to stand up for the rights of all people who are being oppressed or mistreated.
So you have faith that all your causes will carry on?
I do. I do have faith that my causes will continue even when I am no longer here.